Hey everyone, it's your favorite host, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. Yeah, I have been on a reprieve, so forgive me, I haven't been doing episodes as frequently. I've been on vacation. We all need vacation. We all need to take a break sometimes. But I am back with a vengeance. And I couldn't be happier with this guest that I'm about to bring to the stage. She is incredible. Her story is touching the hearts of millions across the globe. And I'm so excited to have her on the Gentleman Style Podcast Show today. You all are in for an absolute treat. Here we go. Hey everyone, I'm your host, your favorite gentleman, Marcus of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today I have Miss Deanna Kuempel on the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. This woman is fantastic. She is a podcast host, fashion designer, figure competitor, beauty queen, and might I add, she is beautiful. But also, she is a business woman, strategist, and sought after for her incredible work all across the globe. She has even closed $20 million in contracts over the course of her career, ran 5 businesses at one time, navigated and settled 9 different lawsuits in 1 year for different businesses related issues. She is so creative, and now she is the fashion diva and a fashion label expert. She's now into podcasting. What a surprise. She's now doing podcasting to share her great works and to share her great stories and to help others by giving back. So help me welcome this incredible guest, Miss Deanna Kuempel. Welcome to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. Thank you, Queen, for being here. We love you.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that was quite the introduction. I was like getting goosebumps and feeling like I was going to cry at the same time. You humble me.
Well, it's all you, Queen. You did the work. You did the incredible work, and you are honoring us by being here today, and we love you for it. So thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Miss Deanna, you have an incredible story, and I just touched the tip of the surface. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. You have a unique background. For example, you do fashion. And she looks incredible, doesn't she, y'all? You're into fashion, but what sparked your interest in fashion? There's something unique about you that I learned, that your family. This is in the blood. This is in the DNA.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I was little, I'm the oldest of 5. My mom had me at 18, so very young. My mom and I are really tight because of that, because we're so close in age. But my grandmother used to babysit me a lot. And so she really was into fashion, shoes, clothes. I would dress up in all her clothes and her high heels and like walk around, the dress would be super long, her hats. So I just fell in love with clothes and fashion at a very young age. And I feel like that's a very creative way for women to express themselves and empower themselves as well. So I've loved fashion since I was a young girl. And my mom is also very fashion forward, just very classy, always put together. It's funny. I was over at her house yesterday for my sister's birthday, and she's doing work in the yard and she's still looking good. I'm like, Mom, you look fabulous. You look beautiful. She's glowing. And I'm like, it's nice to have good examples of strong women in your life that can make impressions like that.
So true. And that's I'm glad you mentioned that, because family is so important. Having that example, that quality example in our lives to show us the way and to show us how to be in this world. Or if it wasn't for mom, who knows what trajectory we'd be on if it wasn't for our mothers. So shout out to mom. Another round of applause for mom. Absolutely. Miss Deanna, you something else about your story that is truly been touching the hearts of millions. You were a victim of human trafficking.
Yes.
Tell us, how did you get in locked into that industry, and how did you escape that tragedy, that horrible scenario? Because it's still rampant. It still exists
Yes.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I was the oldest of five. My father was a deadbeat who's very abusive to my mother and to me, mainly because I was the oldest. So I got the brunt of it. And when I was like 15, I ended up calling the police on him, and it prompted a whole domino effect of my parents getting divorced, luckily. But I had already been old enough where that had left an impression on me, and I ended up getting into a very bad abusive relationship, at a very young age, at like 17. And then from there, I got involved in that industry from, when you're that young and impressionable and you get with a man that's really kind of pulling your strings. He was a man. He was 8 years older than me. So I was out there working. I did a lot of drugs during that time period, and I was blessed to have something inside of me that told me I was meant for more than that. And I slowly, over the course of a couple of years, I slowly started changing my social circle, changing my phone number, and slowly pulling away from all that. That's when I got into bodybuilding, and I was very passionate about going to the gym. And then that's when I met my late husband. So he was kind of like my knight in shining armor that allowed me to really step out of that tragedy. It was a tragedy, and I did a lot of counseling for a very long time to try to heal some of the wounds that was created from being exposed to a lot of that. But yeah, it's part of my journey. I didn't think I was ever going to talk about that, but I have. And it's like the weight of the world was lifted off of my shoulders when I started talking about it. And it's just, unfortunately, some of us experience things like that, and I'm lucky enough to have survived it, especially with a lot of the element that I was hanging around and doing a lot of drugs that I did. So, God had a bigger plan for me, for sure.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for speaking on that. That is such a it's not talked about enough, but it still runs rampant. And like you shared, a man was the one that entrapped you in that industry, but you had the strength and you had the willpower and the determination to take daily steps and actions to get out. And
Yes.
so, what was the final straw for you? When did you sever that connection? When were you able to sever that completely? Because that can help someone get out who may be, on the fence about how did you finally cut that cord.
Well, I was lucky enough to have my late husband. He stepped into my life and really just wanted to take care of me. And I kind of fought it for a while, but I was reading a lot of self-help books. Like I was doing that. I was involved in martial arts, which was really great for discipline and getting myself out of drugs. And and I got into the bodybuilding. So there was like it was a whole process. You have to like know that you're worth more than that, and that you're not stuck. There are resources everywhere. I've gotten involved in a lot of charities since then to support them and just spread the word, because you're right, not a lot of people do talk about it. But if someone's looking for a resource, please reach out to me. You can stay anonymous. I can send you to a charity that will house you, feed you, and get you on the right track. So, I was lucky to find a path that led me down the right road to actually get out of it. So, my late husband was wanting to take care of me and get me, he wanted better for me. So, I was lucky for that.
Shout out to your late husband. Incredible. That is huge, huge. In your experiences, you've worn and you wear so many different hats. In your experiences, you did bodybuilding, for example. What did that teach you that still helps you today in business and in your endeavors today? What did you learn from bodybuilding?
Bodybuilding is a very selfish sport. So if someone doesn't have their head screwed on straight, they really can hurt a lot of people around them just being so selfish. But I competed for probably about 20 years. And every time I dove into the process and just was really strict on my diet, strict on my training, I didn't shut anybody out. I didn't become very selfish, and I didn't get cranky because I enjoyed the growth that happened within the sacrifices of being so strict in my life. And I think that what it taught me in just in general is that nothing good comes easy. And so if you want to achieve a goal, you have got to stay disciplined, you have to stay focused. And those are like muscles that you have to exercise. And so if you don't exercise those, it's hard to achieve anything. And so, I think that doing the bodybuilding over 20 years just taught me discipline, focus, and just the value of sacrifice, because I think that some people think that that's a negative, but sacrifice is a very positive thing in your life if you sacrifice the right things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. So true. And now, fashion, going back to the fashion, going back into bodybuilding taught you sacrifice, determination, a little bit of selfishness, and but also you have an incredible heart of gold. How did that transition into the fashion industry? How did you walk that through? How did you close? First off, how did you close a $20 million contract?
Okay, so these are separate things. My late husband and I had 5 businesses together, and that actually, I was in charge. I did a lot of the contract work, so a lot of the government bids, a lot of the large company bids. So we did like UPS, FedEx. We did all the yellow school buses throughout the U.S. and in Canada. A majority of them, the waste haulers, you name it. We sold them transmissions, remanufactured transmissions. Did not love our industry. I'm a total girly girl, so the transmissions automotive world wasn't like my favorite thing, but I was very strong in the business side of things. My late husband and I, we complemented each other that way very well. So I worked very hard for a contract for the state of South Carolina, which was all of their school buses throughout the whole state. And so it was for 4 years, and the total, the estimated value was $5 million a year, because that's what they had paid previously for transmissions throughout the year. And so that was the value of the bid. And so I worked very hard with the procurement manager, purchasing person, and just to make sure that I covered all my bases within the bid, because things have to be worded a certain way. You have to include certain documents to support your submission, support your proposal. So I dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and I worked very hard. I remember the day that I got the award letter, I was shocked, because that was the largest one-time contract that I had won. Previously to that, I got the Greyhound, first student, first vehicle, first transit. I had gotten that bid, which was worth way more than that over the course of several years, but it wasn't like all at once. We had to keep getting it renewed and renewed and renewed. So, I have won several multi-million-dollar bids over the years, but that was one at one time that was so much, and it was a huge accomplishment. I was very proud of that.
I love that. That's a huge accomplishment, and you're right. What is it that contracting? So you and your husband did this together, but you were the mastermind. You were the organizer. You kept everything, like you said. You crossed dotted the I's. I said crossed the I's.
All right, I knew what you meant.
you dotted every I and you crossed every T, and that's huge. That's
Yeah.
not easy to do, to
Yeah.
win a government contract. What did you learn in that process that you didn't know before, if any?
How to just work with the purchasing person, how important it is, because there's several people that are in that food chain that when you are going after a bit of that size. So it's the transportation director or the maintenance director. You've got to like make sure that you're in good with them, and then it gets passed over to the purchasing. So once you are in the running for this type of bid, then you've got to really understand what the purchasing, or procurement director is looking for. And so I made sure that I was asking the right questions, because I had already done some. I mean, I was always doing bids. I was always looking for more bids, winning. I mean, I won so many bids all over the United States. So, like, it wasn't new to me, but this was new to me in the regard that I wanted to win. And so I made sure I asked the right appropriate questions, so that it wasn't like I was infringing on, just being within, like, my what's the word I'm looking for, not morals, but just ethical, as far as how I was managing that relationship. Because you can step over boundaries when you're asking questions with someone in that position, and I made sure that I was strategic in my questions. So, you just got to ask the right questions. I think that, if you slow down, some people were always running so fast, in our society. If you're really focused in on something and you slow down and you are aware of what you're getting yourself into, I think that you're able to find the questions to get the right answers.
So in bidding for a government contract, it's not just you follow the proposal to the letter. I mean, that's part of it, but you
Part of it.
have an opportunity to talk to people and communicate with
Yes.
people and say, hey, can you expound on this part of the proposal, or can you help me figure out exactly what you need? There's some time that you can actually talk to somebody. It's not just, follow this sheet of paper.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough. Yeah, and that's true. There's sometimes you can't always get in touch with the procurement, slash purchasing person. But I was lucky enough that, they always called me back, or I called them at the right time. So it was just meant to be. I think that was just part of my path, and I was able to get into contact with them. And, it's more of like, well, if would it be helpful? Some of the questions I think I asked was, would it be helpful if I included our technical sheet, like how we build our transmissions, all of our parts that we, our OE parts that we put in there. Because when there's no such thing as a brand new transmission unless you get surplus from an OE, but they make transmissions brand new to fit their production schedule for that type of vehicle, right? And so, you only can get a remanufactured transmission. So if your transmission goes out, they're either going to rebuild yours when you take it to the shop, or they're going to buy a remanufactured transmissions from someone like us, a remanufacturer. There's only a couple in the countries. There's not a lot. And so, that was what we offered. And they typically wanted to do business with Allison, which is for a larger transmission, which would fit a school bus, a waist hauler, a large delivery truck. Those were the type of transmissions that we rebuilt. And so, I was asking if a tech sheet would be helpful in the bid, that they could see that we fit the specs of an OE. And so that was a question that I asked, and that I included, where you didn't have to include that, but I did, to really just kind of leverage our relationship and our chances of winning the bid.
See, y'all, beauty and brains. You need to have both. You have to have both.
Yeah.
Incredible, phenomenal. We are going to go to a quick commercial break. You guys stay tuned, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Support for Gentleman Style Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers you precision engineering tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off free worldwide shipping with the code GENTSTYLE at manscaped.com.
If you're looking for a reliable...
I like that. That was cute. I like the commercial.
Thank you. We are back to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. We have the incredible, amazing Deanna spilling the tea on so many different industries and sharing her incredible story of how she survived human trafficking and what success she and her late husband have accomplished in their journey today. And she's just sharing that tea. If you missed that, if you missed any of that, go back, scroll back, and check her out. We are on all platforms: iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcast. She is incredible. Miss Deanna, you have a podcast called Label Free Podcast. Explain how you came up with that name. What does that mean?
So, after my husband passed away 7 years ago,
I'm
that was
sorry.
almost 7 years ago. It's about 6.5. That was a huge transitional time for me. And that was when I started my fashion business. And, I went through it. It was a journey, not only emotionally, mentally. I stepped into my voice, I guess. And that's when I started talking about the human trafficking. And after the end of my fashion career, when I created my last collection and I showcased it at a huge event I did against human trafficking here in the Chicagoland area, we had over 300 people. I was like, what's next? I'm totally type A. I always have to have something going on. I have to be going after something, achieving something. And so I remembered a couple of days later, I think it was after I'd wrapped that event up, I got an ad, or I got an email for how to start a podcast under $100. And I was like, oh my God, this looks interesting. I didn't really know what a podcast was. So I read it, talked to my best friend about it, and I was just like, I'm so tired of labels that I've put on myself, people that label me, because I was labeled as a widow. Like, how dare you try to move forward in your life and start over? There was just so many different things that not only I carried on myself from being a human trafficking person and survivor and being in the industry, because the thoughts that go through your head and that you just make yourself feel bad, like, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not loved, I'm not lovable. There's a lot of those things that, and I was abused. I was abused as a young girl. So, and I was abused as an adult woman. I had boyfriends that abused me, that hit me, stabbed me, abducted me, took me out in the middle of nowhere, almost killed me. And so you carry a lot of those labels on yourself, and which can hold you back. And so we came up with Label Free Podcasts, live your best life, live label free. And that can mean so much for so many people in every aspect of life, in work, in your family, in your love life, and so, to live your best life, you must live label free. And so just to be empowered to shed those labels so that you can feel fulfilled in your life and have that authentic joy and peace and happiness is just so important. And that's something that I've found in my journey, in the last 6 years, is coming to a place of joy and just happiness and being okay sitting with myself in the silence, because I have found that peace within and I've shed those labels.
Wow. I told you guys, absolutely incredible and a true heart of gold. Miss Deanna, you are in fashion, an industry I know nothing about.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is a very talked about industry and a very important industry
Yeah.
of looking good. That all blends together. Feeling beautiful, loving on yourself, dressing, getting fancy and getting dolled up. That all makes you feel good.
Yes.
What advice would you give to the young girl out there that's interested in starting her own label or struggling, because the pandemic was terrible?
Yeah.
Pandemic messed everybody up. What advice would you give to that young girl out in the audience about fashion labels?
So, well, do your research first. So for me, I didn't do any research really. What I did was I found a company out of Soho, New York, that would help me. That was kind of like a consulting firm to help me with the whole process. Hindsight, I should have slowed down and really researched the industry, learned a little bit more about the process, and sourced things individually myself. Could have saved me a lot of money, a lot of time. I probably wouldn't have gone as fast. So I was encouraged to do a whole collection, and I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, okay, I didn't cross check what I was being told. And I did a huge collection. It cost me a lot of money. And I ended up being on the runway in Rhode Island for Style Week. I was on the local news there. So I had a lot of successes within the fashion industry. But if I was to go back, I would have made myself my own fit model. I wouldn't have got a fit model that was too skinny, because I couldn't wear my clothes. So today, people I think have learned, a lot of designers have learned, and they're creating clothes, their samples in their size, so that they're able to showcase them on social media, pictures, and promote them without, so because they can wear it. And so it's a little bit more real world, apply it more to the real world, to real life. So I would recommend that. Slowing down a little bit. Don't do a whole collection unless you've got deep pockets like that. I did not. So, I probably would have did a lot more. I would have focused on the e-commerce and did more social media. I was trying to do it like the old school way. And I think that the consulting firm I was using, that's all they knew. And so I was trusting them and did not realize that I should have done a little bit more research. So I would say go for it if you're creative and that's something you want to do. That was a dream of mine. And, I was a candidate. I was in the Cadillac Design Challenge here in Style Chicago. So I was, I was a finalist in that. So that was huge. I had my name on, I was on a huge billboard with my design, and it was just awesome. So I had a lot of successes, but monetarily, I did not have the deep pockets to go the path that I was recommended to go.
Would you recommend getting investors, or would you recommend, not getting an agency to help you? Just, like you said, do your research. Don't get an agency, or would you still recommend that?
You know what? It's such a different world that we live in. I see so many. I have a couple of favorite designers that I love and I buy from that are very big into social media. And I'd say if you're going to start out into that industry, I would really figure out who your target audience is. Are you going to want to be in like a Macy's or Nordstrom's? If you're going to want to go that route, you're going to have to understand what that's going to take to get in there. I know Macy's has a program that you can get into if you're a designer just starting out, but you're going to have to be prepared to have a supply chain that's going to support whatever sales that you have there. But they have an incubator program for young designers that I was getting into, and I had applied, I had sent in my application, and it was, I was very close, but I just didn't have the money to continue to throw after something that I wasn't seeing any return, So
Sure.
I did do a successful Kickstarter. So I did raise some money after my first collection to produce my first, to produce my first order. So yeah, I had some successes, but it's very difficult. You have to, I would say, if you have investors and a good business plan, do it. Figure out where you want to sell. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be in a store? And then, kind of work backwards from there, because it's a lot. You're going to need some deep pockets to do that.
For sure. Love it. Spilling the tea. This is what I love. We have a question from our VIP sponsor, Miss Nikki Rose. She asked a question. Going back to the human trafficking, how did you escape the human trafficking mentality to become the successful businesswoman you are today?
That's a great question. So, I think that when this is good and bad, right? There's two sides to everything. When you're involved in that and you're doing that kind of work, right? You kind of like numb yourself. You cut yourself off to emotion. And that didn't serve me well in my personal relationship, but it served me well in business, where I did not allow my emotions to get in between making a business decision. I was very good at making decisions in business. My late husband said I was the driver, because I always wanted to keep go. Let's be successful. We got to get that deal. And so we traveled like 3 weeks out of the month, but I was also very cold in my personal life, because I had been in that for so long, because you just it was like a defense mechanism, like a survival thing, where, in order to survive mentally and emotionally, I had to cut myself off to certain emotions. And so now in my life, it's the complete opposite. I'm not as cold anymore. And so, I have to be in a business where I'm allowed to think with my heart and, and not be so closed off like that. So that was how I was able to become so successful in a lot of different areas of my life.
Great question, Miss Nikki. I hope that answers your question. It most certainly touched the hearts of me. That's, man, to survive, to be a survivor, it's incredible, and I applaud you. A round of applause for Deanna. Miss Deanna, you've dropped so many nuggets this episode. Any final nuggets in the hat? Any words of advice? Any final words of advice to our audience? To that young girl that is bullied and I mean, bullying is such a horrible thing.
Oh
But
yeah.
any final nuggets to that young girl that just she wants to take charge of her life because you took the reins, you
Yeah.
took charge of your life, you made your life your own.
Yeah.
Any advice to her? Final advice to her?
Absolutely. I think that, nothing is helpless. Nothing is, life is very short. No matter where you are at in your journey, if you make it, you have to decide that what you want your life to look like and take small action steps to work towards that life that you want to have. And it's going to take work. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have days where you feel like the world's crashing down around you, and you're going to have days where you feel like you are on top of the world. You are just owning it. You got your cape and your sword in your hand, and you're just charging through. And those times when you're feeling low is a time to embrace the growth and embrace those emotions and know that it doesn't last forever. And, I still have bad days, but when I have a bad day, instead of feeding into those negative thoughts, I try to pour positive in. I'll watch Joel Osteen. I'll watch a motivational video. I'll watch, just something along those lines to wipe out or that negative thoughts that's going on, those negative emotions, because we're only human. We're not all going to have perfect days, but you have got to do something to counteract that negativity and just know that you are capable of so much more than you think.
So true. So true. Miss Deanna, how can we connect with you? How can we love on you? How can we support the mission you are on? The train has left the station, y'all. But how can we connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm on everywhere. As you put in, I see you popping up in the things here. I'm also the head coach and co-founding partner of the Female Podcasters Network. So if there's any women out there that are looking to get into podcasting, we are here to support the female community and getting started in a podcast, or if they're looking for coaching or on that. But I'm on Instagram, Label Free Podcast, YouTube, Label Free Podcast, Facebook, Label Free Podcast, my website, labelfreepodcast.com, Twitter, Label Podcast. You search Label Free Podcast, it'll come up. You Google search me. I'm like on 5 pages, so you can find me.
And if you all still can't find her, reach out to me and I will connect you to her. Absolutely. Yes. Support. We must continue to uplift this queen. She's on a mission and she's changing the world, one household, one mind, one heart at a time. You are. Miss Deanna, you are phenomenal. I want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here and give back in this way. It is incredible. I want to say that to you publicly. Don't ever quit. Don't ever give up. We need you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, my audience, for tuning into the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And thank you, Agent K200. Thank you for sharing your story. So see, changing lives every day. That's what we do here on this show. We uplift and encourage, and we change your mindset and your heart, one household at a time. So thank you all for tuning in to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. I hope this was helpful. I hope this message inspires, encourages, and uplifts and helps you take your business, your mindset, your company to the next level. Like I end every show, take care of your friends, take care of your family, and always take care of business. This is Marcus Norman and the incredible, beautiful Deanna Kuempel of the Label Free Podcast, signing off. Love you guys. Bye.